It was snowing non-stop that day. This winter has been particularly frosty. The main character's hands and feet are always freezing, so she has a painful aversion to the cold. She couldn't stand the bloody cold. It was already costing her a fortune to pay the bills. The main character suggested that it might happen that she would simply die of cold. But still, the girl decided not to worry about it because she only lives once and turned the heating on full blast with the remote control. Meanwhile, others were living the high life. The obsessed Archduke of the North and the bright ray of sunshine, the Archduke of the South. These two, along with a princess, are the main characters of a romantic story in the fantasy genre. The girl had read about a princess begging the archdukes to leave her alone. This comic book was rather naive, and yet it was the main character's only comfort now. She spent all her time trying to earn a living, so she didn't make any friends. And relationships didn't really work out. So the protagonist tried to somehow revive the long-dead butterflies in her stomach. Davin's twinkling eyes were focused on the crying Mabel. For the first time, his gaze didn't beam with friendliness. Reading this, the girl wondered what would happen next and what was even going on there. But suddenly, she sneezed. The main character didn't realize where the blowing was coming from. When the girl went to look to the window, was shocked because her Davin first got angry at the main character of the novel. The girl was looking out the window and accidentally fell out of it. The Archduke was the protagonist's favorite, and it was one of the key moments of the story. At first, the heroine's mind went blank, but then it was caught by pain. After all, the girl did not understand why she would die this way. It was very cold. The main character woke up. She was in shock because she woke up in a body that was not her own. It wasn't clear to her what had happened. It was so damn cold. It was the first time she had ever been so cold, and her hands were very cold. A man called the main character his wife and asked how her health was. That golden hair and red eyes, and the innocent face, the luxurious decorations. It reminded the protagonist of something. For some reason, the heroine thought of a comic book she was reading right before she fell. She asked if she could look in the mirror. The heroine suggested that it looked like she had died falling out of the window after all. She didn't want to believe that she was really dead, so she moved into the body of the main character of the comic book. She had snow-white hair and pink eyes. She was clearly not the main character and was a little upset. Pondering, the girl remembered that there was no character with that appearance in the comic at all and didn't realize who she was. And this man who called her wife was probably one of the main characters. Michael Leatherbane, Archduke of the North. But the main question was who the main character had become. Remembering what he had called her, she decided to ask him if he had really called her that. The girl was very embarrassed. The man asked if it would be better if he called her Aisha. He didn't understand why he couldn't do that. The protagonist was surprised to hear her new name. Michael's ex-wife is Aisha Marianne. She betrayed the Archduke by stealing a lot of money from him and then ran away to another country. Michael was willing to do anything for her, but Aisha broke his heart. After that, the Archduke lost his faith in women. The girl remembered that Michael is a divorcee and did not understand why she moved into the body of this particular character. And besides, her favorite is the Archduke of the South and did not understand why she got the North because she hates the cold. Michael, looking at Aisha, noticed that she had become quite pale. She was scared, and when she looked in the mirror, she noticed that she was white as a corpse. The girl thought she was fine, but kind of not, as her hands were just ice cold and assumed it was already quite dangerous. Aisha couldn't live there. The girl began to faint. Michael caught his wife and did not understand what had happened to her. When Aisha opened her eyes and Michael said she had fainted, the girl felt very strange about fainting because of the cold, but there was a fireplace in the room. The fire was blazing, but even that didn't save the situation. The girl assumed that she was at the North Pole. Aisha turned to her husband, but immediately closed her eyes without speaking. Michael waited for an answer. From the outside, it must have looked like Aisha was about to lose her breath, and those were her last words. The girl apologized to Michael out of breath, because it looked like she would have to repeat the escape of his ill-fated wife. Suddenly, the girl decided to say she wanted to go south after all. The man was completely shocked. Aisha was burning with embarrassment. Michael Litherbon. Despite his 26 years, the Archduke of the North commanded a powerful army magnificently. He was a flawless man, the way a protagonist should be. Since childhood, Michael has lived in the North, so he is a true patriot. He almost never leaves his domain, and because of this, everyone thought that he was kept there by force. In terms of character, everything is rosy. Michael is uncompromising and often falls into obsession, so Aisha thought she had said that for nothing. Michael waited for an answer from Aisha, who was frozen with fear. The man did not understand why his wife wanted to go south. After half an hour of questioning, Aisha said it was just a fainting delusion and she didn't want to go there at all. Michael says she can't go south. Aisha hoped that the lunatic wouldn't act like that. By the way, if you think about it that way, there is the main character, Princess Mabel, and she thought why Michael was being coddled by her and not by the princess. But then, Aisha remembered that she must have gotten to a time when the plot hadn't started yet, and Michael was still with Aisha then, and it turns out he's not connected to Mabel in any way yet. The main character decided to think things over slowly. Having lost her parents, Mabel lived alone until she came to the palace as a maid. Seeing Mabel so similar to the late princess, the empress welcomed her into her family. Everyone at court genuinely liked her. Then the charming Mabel meets the two main characters, the Archdukes of the North and South. The Archduke of the North has no blood ties to the imperial family, while Davin is a prince but has been sent to rule the South. They both fall head over heels in love with Mabel's free-spiritedness and innocence. Aisha pondered when it would be best for her to disappear, and decided that she should wait for the right time and tear her claws out, because she couldn't live there in that cold. Michael said again that she wasn't allowed to do such a thing. Aisha was surprised and asked if Michael was talking to her because she hadn't said anything. Michael said that he wouldn't let Aisha go anywhere. But right now, Michael wasn't the main problem. The main character couldn't be the Archduchess of the North because she is a hardcore freezer. The man said he wouldn't let her go anywhere. Aisha didn't understand why Michael was so obsessed with the North. The girl smiled and wanted to talk about something else, but the guy kept saying that she couldn't go south. Aisha said that they seemed to have visitors, pointing to the doors. Michael ordered them into the room. The girl was indeed cold. When she saw the man with red cheeks, she felt sorry for him. It was the male healer who had come to measure Aisha's pulse. But the man was silent, and Aisha didn't understand why he was being obtuse about everything, and began to get nervous. Michael was directly devouring the healer with his eyes. The man turned to the Archduke, to which Michael ordered him to take his hands off his wife for starters. Aisha was a little shocked at this behavior because the healer was an old man after all, and it was a little inappropriate to be jealous of him. When the healer took his hands away, Archduke Michael questioned why his beloved Aisha fainted so often. The healer needed, for starters, to clarify where the Duchess was from. Aisha tuned out of such questions because she didn't know herself. Michael asked if it would help with his wife's treatment situation. After receiving an answer that it did, Michael said that his wife was from the south of Malta. Aisha was even surprised and a little excited herself and tried to remember something about Malta since she had heard it somewhere before. It was strange that Aisha was straight from the south. Malta was Davin's territory, and all the aristocracy lived there. Aisha thought she might be of noble blood since she was from that land. Aisha and Davin share a homeland. The doctor said that since she came from such a warm place, that explained everything. Michael didn't know what he was talking about. Aisha decided that this was her chance. She told the healer that everything was fine and he could talk sooner. The doctor, after some thought, said that Michael's wife's body did not tolerate low temperatures well, and she was unable to cope with the cold of the north, hence the frequent fainting. The Duke asked what they should do in that case, and suggested that perhaps it would be better for them to sit by the fireplace more often. But the man said that this option would be fine for a while, but that the products of combustion could still severely compromise the Duchess's health later on. Aisha wondered what she should do then, and asked if she should go to some sanatorium in the hope of being sent south. The male healer said that was a great idea. And for example, maybe the South. Michael's face changed in an instant, and he told the doctor that if he wanted to continue the sentence, it would be a big risk for him. After these words, the doctor became very frightened and said that the southern continent was worse than the northern continent, so they had better not leave here. Aisha was shocked because the man had come to voice her much-needed words, but Michael did not let him. The Archduke said that they understood everything, and that's why the doctor can go now. And Aisha also didn't understand what was wrong with her so-called husband, because his wife had fallen off her feet right in front of his eyes, and he had no plans to solve the problem. Because of the cold, the girl couldn't even think properly. The protagonist did not understand why he was so stubborn and remembered the princess, who said that the north was beautiful. Not thanks to Michael, the trip was unforgettable. The man kissed the princess's hands, telling her not to go back to the south. That's exactly how Michael was, and the main character recalled reading comments about how Michael was a cutie, and a lot of people just wanted them to find happiness up north in the comic, because Michael isn't at all what he seemed in the first chapters. The girl didn't understand what was wrong with the comments, because Davin is much better, and besides, it was a very advanced stubbornness. Michael's stubbornness drives anyone crazy, and that's why the girl asked the author to make Mabel and Davin to be together and live happily ever after. The main character wrote hateful comments, but no one reacted to them. She also suggested that it could be karma, and now she was paying for all those mean words. Michael asked why his wife was tearing her hair out and stroked her head. Aisha said she had a question. The South was her homeland. So why couldn't she go there, even if only for a while, and asked what the reason was for such strictness? In the comic, Michael had said that Mabel was his first true love, which meant that nothing could happen between him and Aisha, and it was very interesting to see what reason he would give now. Michael said there was no reason. Aisha was shocked and did not understand what he meant. The man turned to Aisha and took the girl's hand and said that there were only mean bastards there, but the lady didn't understand what was wrong. There's one in particular who's always talking nonsense, but she's friends with him, and it was stressing him out. Aisha had no idea who he was talking about, but in short, the man was referring to Davin because he was the one to be feared the most, and his sarcastic smile. The girl asked if he was talking about the Duke of the South. Michael confirmed her words, and the protagonist was very surprised to hear such news about her friendship with Davin. Besides, Davin and sarcasm didn't really go together, for he was very kind. Randomly, these thoughts came out loud, but the truth was that Davin is just good-natured. He treats his friends well, always smiling, and for the protagonist, he is the standard of all positive qualities, and in general, a good-looking man. And Michael said that from now on, he would not let the Duke of the South set foot on his territory. The Duke turned around and walked away, and the girl assumed that he might have taken offense. But Aisha didn't want to believe it to the end, because how would this obsessed protagonist sulk over such nonsense? Michael didn't speak to Aisha for the next 4 days, and it turns out there are men like that after all. The maid asks if the mistress is okay, and the protagonist tells Lara not to worry so much about her, because she's perfectly fine. Lara is Aisha's personal maid. She had been with her mistress for 4 days since she had been displaced, and because of the cold, she had been sleeping like a murderer. But even this short time was enough to accept the simple truth. Whether Aisha liked it or not, she now had to live in this house, and let her become a character in a comic book, and she can be watched by thousands of readers' eyes at all times. There is no magic in this world, so there are no warming charms either. No matter how many clothes the girl put on, she was still cold. The Duke's wife had not been sent to a sanatorium in the South, and the only way out was to escape, and if not, she would surely freeze to death. Aisha asked her maid where her husband was. Lara said his lordship was on patrol with the knights, so he wouldn't be back until late at night. Aisha thought about how today would be the perfect day to escape, but she hadn't made plans yet. Perhaps she should have seized the moment after all. Suddenly, another maid came running into the room, calling for her mistress very loudly. Aisha didn't understand what had happened or why she had such a bad feeling. The maid said there was an unexpected guest, and the butler took him to the drawing room. Someone had gotten to the manor despite the cold, and since Michael wasn't there, Aisha had to meet the visitor herself. She had not expected any guests, but it was not the visit itself that surprised her, but the bustle that was all around. And the maid said that it was simply because their guest was the Archduke of the South himself. The former prince, now Duke of the South, Davin Maltian, was sitting right in front of the protagonist. She was overjoyed, and the man was telling her that he was glad to meet her ladyship, the Archduchess of the North. The man was much more masculine than Aisha had thought he was when she read the comic, and she asked him what he was here for. Davin said he had some business nearby, so he decided to stop by on his way to visit an old friend. It all turned out to be very strange to Aisha. She decided to put together what she had heard about what her so-called husband was saying and what the Duke was saying. The main character wasn't sure if Aisha was just a mere minor character, because too big a role was given to someone who was mentioned with literally one line in the comic. Davin suggested that it looked like Archduke Litherban wasn't home because she was the only one who had come out to meet him. Aisha simply said that her husband was absent tonight. The man looked very intently at her servants. The girl decided that maybe he was hinting at her to get all the outsiders out, but decided not to do anything for now, and said that since Davin had stopped by, she would ask him to tell her how her family was doing. The Duke of the South said he would tell everything, and the Duchess escorted everyone out of the room. Aisha thought that, judging by his reaction, she really did have a family, and if her finger pointing to the sky turned out to be wrong, it would be quite embarrassing. And speaking of up close, Davin looked exactly as the protagonist envisioned him. And certainly the Duke was very different from Michael. But suddenly the Duke of the South said he confessed that he had in no way expected his longtime friend to bring up the subject of family. Aisha thought about how she seemed to have a bad relationship with her family, and she also noticed that he addressed her as you, and apparently they were and are friends. Davin said that since she was asking, he wanted to start a conversation, since he'd been wanting to talk to her for a long time. The Duchess didn't know what he wanted to discuss with her, but the man started with her father, Baron Marianne. Aisha, from the Baron's family, was far below the Duke's rank. Nevertheless, Aisha and Davin address each other informally, hence they are close. When she heard that her father was a baron, she realized that she was still an aristocrat, but not of the upper class. So why Michael had chosen to marry a woman far below her title was unclear, and she wondered what kind of man her father was. Aisha hoped he was a good one, but it wasn't to be. And Davin said that he had heard people say that her father still can't pull himself together and constantly visits underground gambling establishments. That's something Aisha didn't expect. Dad's a gambler. The protagonist wondered how one had to lose to have to go that far for the sake of paying off debts. And Michael is no less strange. He married a girl he didn't love while incurring solely losses from the union. Not only did he get nothing, but he paid back Aisha's father's debts. Why he did this was unclear. Davin said he had sent Arian to an academy on the outskirts of the Empire so she might not worry about him. The girl didn't know who that was and asked again, getting the answer that, "And you're her younger brother," and the Duke couldn't leave him to his fate. The girl admired him because the Duke cared for even her brother, and she knew he was the best. Looks like her little brother had suffered too. Aisha thanked the man and said she would definitely pay him back for his kindness. The Duke said he didn't need anything because they weren't strangers to each other. They were just friends, and he said things to her like nothing happened that made Aisha very uncomfortable. After this conversation, the Duke asked if they could talk about something important. The Duke of the South approached Aisha and asked her why she thought he had come here. The girl could not even guess the reason for his visit and was very embarrassed because he was very close. But Davin said he had brought what she had asked him for. Aisha didn't know what he was talking about, so she asked what it was. What she saw there was a divorce agreement. The girl was shocked and didn't understand what was going on. Davin said she got it right, and all the other papers are there too. And once they have Archduke Michael's seal on them, it's all over. The protagonist asked if she had asked Davin for something like that, to which the man said that 2 months ago, on her wedding day, she had secretly asked him for exactly that. On her wedding day, Aisha was already thinking about divorce. In the original story, Aisha left Michael and went far, far away. It's like she left her new family, and the protagonist still thinks she had a good reason for running away. Well, yes, her father has bankrupted the family and sold his daughter to pay off his debts, and in short, it's the perfect opportunity for the protagonist to run away as well. The girl was a little shocked that it was Davin who helped Aisha escape. The Duchess thanked him for coming there for her. Davin said that everything was fine and she shouldn't get caught, and at the same time asked if she'd look south. But the girl said she probably wouldn't because that would be quite a problem. The Duke of the South assumed she didn't want to go because of the Baron and said she would help deal with him. Well, the woman said it wasn't that. It was just that she didn't want to offend Michael. Aisha's escape would be a blow to Michael, and she couldn't imagine how he would be depressed to learn that she had gone to the South. And besides, Aisha had only talked about her homeland, and if she went there, he would find her, most likely. So the girl said that first of all he should go to the capital, and then he would think about it because it was warmer there than here. Davin said it was all sad, but if anything happened, she could be sure to contact him, and said he would go before her creepy Duke came back, so Aisha might not have to see him off. Aisha noticed that it was cold outside and told her friend to dress warmer. The man himself was in a bad mood because of this frost, and he told his girlfriend to dress warmer too. Now the main character has begun to feel the reality of what is happening, and everything is unfolding just like in the original story. A couple days later, the paperwork was ready and a plan for everything was made. The things were packed, and the protagonist learned the map of the area. Now it was just a matter of getting out of the manor, and she also wrote a letter to Michael. In the letter, the girl apologized and said that she didn't mean to do that, but she would definitely die of cold here sooner or later. When the girl went out, she didn't understand why everything was going so smoothly, and she even managed to avoid the knights on duty. This was the last ship, and finally she would say goodbye to this damned cold. Looking back, she saw the knights behind her asking her mistress to come with them. The first attempt at escape had failed. Aisha was sitting in her room and noticed that there was no letter or documents in her room, and apparently her husband had burned everything. She did not understand what was going on, and the guards had not even been introduced to her room, and she had just tried to escape yesterday. It seems that heaven has given her a second chance, but either that or it's still the original plot, and so it's time to retry the escape. The main character followed the knights and realized that soon the changing of the guard, although the time will be very little, but she has a chance. And if she could get out in time, she could escape. As she looked outside, she realized that she didn't stand a chance. This was just crazy. There were so many knights there, and Aisha didn't understand what they were all doing there, but decided that it was okay because she had foreseen this outcome and had prepared herself beforehand. Aisha prepared in advance. The heroine asked Laura, the maid, how they got the kitten there. The maid said that the kitten must have gotten in through a hole in the garden because it must have been very cold. The kitten was so cute. And suddenly Aisha thought about the hole in the wall. When everyone was out, the Duchess came closer to the hole and began to look at it. The girl tried to climb into that hole and was happy because she managed to do it, but when she started to move on, she saw a knight in front of her who was already waiting to catch her. The second escape attempt failed as well. When Aisha and Michael saw each other, they were silent, and Aisha wished he wouldn't look at her like that and prayed that he would say something to her. Not waiting for any reaction from her husband, Aisha said she was leaving, but Michael stopped her and asked her to wait. The man grabbed her arm. This scared the main character very much because the Duke was very strong. Michael said he would only ask one thing. The Archduke asked his wife why she was always trying to leave the house. The girl remembered how the maids had reassured her and told her that it was not so cold today and it was only -20. But whatever Aisha said, Michael wouldn't understand. The girl felt very uncomfortable for standing like that and being silent. The cold was keeping her down. But Michael had told her that she could keep quiet if she didn't want to. But no matter how many times she ran away, he would still bring her back. Aisha couldn't stand it and started screaming that she was really cold, but no one reacted to her screams, and the protagonist didn't understand why he was silent because it was really important for her. The Archduke was surprised and asked if she was only running away because of the cold. Aisha said it was. This really surprised Michael. The maids called the lady with them and they went into the room together. The maids prepared clothes for Mistress and provided Aisha with very warm pajamas that suited the Duchess very well. They offered the Mistress warm tea and finally asked if Aisha was warm in this blanket, and if so, they wished the Mistress good night. Aisha herself did not realize what was happening. Aisha didn't quite grasp what was going on, but she felt fine. The Duchess had thought it would probably be cold again in the morning, but now she felt very good. Aisha woke up and noticed that for some reason it was morning, but she was still warm. Looking at her hands, the girl was stunned. They were tied to Michael's hands. She didn't understand why he had tied them, for there might be marks. The man woke up and removed the cloth from his hands. Aisha had seen this somewhere before. The girl did not understand what he was doing or what was going on. There were a great many maids in front of them. Aisha was handed hot tea. The girl was grateful, but Aisha noticed that it was not really tea and something strange was coming from it. The Duchess asked Michael what it was, to which the man replied that it was an overseas medicine and it was extremely effective. Aisha was very uncomfortable drinking it because the medicine did not taste good. The maids kept bringing what Aisha had to eat. It seemed like an eternity to the girl. They all just exhausted the protagonist already. The maids dressed Aisha in a scarf that was made of fox skin and gloves from a famous craftsman, and it all hadn't stopped since yesterday. There were many servants in the room. Some were fanning the fireplace to make it warmer. Some were in charge of the Duchess's clothes. Aisha turned to Michael with an angry look, and he thought she was still cold, so he ordered the maid to wave even faster and asked his wife to be patient for a while. But that's not what Aisha meant, and said that she had had enough of all this. She shouted that she had had enough because her head was spinning and asked if Michael could send the servants away for a while. The maids were very surprised, but they left the room in a flash, leaving the gentleman behind. The main character commented that the maids have very good synchronicity and they are all so coherent. Michael said that they still had a lot to say to each other, and Aisha said that first she was waiting for an explanation about the arm bandage. Michael sighed, and before he could open his eyes, he saw Aisha very close to him, asking him at what point he had gotten on the bed with her. Michael became embarrassed and asked her not to think about any of that. Aisha didn't understand and asked what it all meant, assuming he thought Aisha would try to escape again. But Michael said that the doctor had told him that holding her hand would help keep her warm. Michael was very embarrassed, and Aisha felt a strange sensation when she realized that the Duke had gone to the doctor while she slept to see how she was doing. The main character began to remember the moment in the comic when Michael took Mabel by the chin and a smug smile played on his face, and he told her that she was his and asked her to let her know that he would never let her go. The girl didn't realize if he was definitely the character from the comic, because he was pretty much vilified in the comic. Michael did say that he needed the blindfold so he wouldn't accidentally let go of her hand in his sleep, and that was honestly the only reason. The Duchess said she believed him completely, and Michael turned to the girl. She thought about the fact that since the time they were alone together, he had only called her by her first name. Michael said that he would make sure Aisha was warm. She just needed to stay warm. His words were full of determination, and strangely enough, they made Aisha's heart flutter. Michael thought about how he shouldn't have jumped to conclusions, and he could have sorted this out himself. The man remembered being told he would be sorry and apparently not even realizing how his little bare favor might affect her. Michael immediately realized what Davin meant. After the wedding, the maids had told the master that she hadn't left her room or eaten anything in days. The mistress had been in a constant state of unconsciousness. Michael didn't care even if she hated him. He wanted her not to leave his side. The man chastised himself because it was just awful that he didn't trust her, and he thought she was doing this because she hated him. Remembering that Aisha had said she was just cold, Michael assumed that apparently she didn't hate him. If Michael solved the problem, and if Aisha was warm, then maybe she would stay with him. Michael just thought that she wanted to leave him, and he thought he was crazy for assuming that. Michael exhaled a sigh of relief that he hadn't been abandoned. Last night, the Archduke visited the healer right in the middle of the night and asked what he should do to keep Aisha warm and asked if there was anything he could do to cure her. The doctor said that, for one thing, his wife needed to drink a warming medicine every day and always wear a scarf, gloves, and socks, and it would also be good to have someone by her side at all times. The Duke looked menacingly and asked what he meant, and the healer said that he had only named something that would help his bride stay warmer and meant nothing else. The Duke ordered him to come to the manor in a couple days for a second examination and repeat to her everything he had told him now. The doctor realized that he had better not joke with the Duke, because one wrong move and he would say goodbye to his life, so he had no right to make a mistake. The doctor came in and told Aisha that the medicine seemed to be working, and her condition had improved considerably over the past few days. If you think about it, she had even stopped fainting, in which case the Duchess no longer had to be on bed rest. The Duke looked at the doctor with anger, and so the doctor said that there was one rule that she should definitely adhere to. This rule was that Aisha must hold hands with the Archduke at all times. Michael was pleased. The girl was at a loss, or as he added, that it would be even better if they slept together, because the main thing was to keep warm. The man went up to his wife and said that there was nothing to be done about it, and the doctor should be obeyed. The maid's eyes were glad, because recently the Duke and Duchess had noticeably improved their relations, and the atmosphere inside the estate had somehow changed. They were even a little jealous. Michael held Aisha's hand every day, and he would skip practice on odd excuses just to be with his wife longer, and even in his office while doing business, he wouldn't let Aisha go. And during the meal, he sat next to the protagonist as if glued. The girl asked if his actions were for medical purposes, but Michael confirmed it. But Aisha was confused by the interested glances of the other inhabitants of the manor, and especially of one particular one, Aaron. The servant that Michael treasures most, he kept staring at them. Aisha thought he didn't care, but he seems shy of the girl because he's so young. Aisha asked her husband to let go of her hand already, but what she got in response was a denial, because Michael said that the doctor said to always hold her hand. And the girl asked if he was not tired of going everywhere together. Michael said with a smile that on the contrary, he was more relaxed that way. The man kissed the girl's hand and asked if she was warm. The main character got shy and said she wasn't that warm. She told herself it was all for medical purposes and not to take it any other way. South, Malta. Aaron asked his lord what he was thinking about, but the Duke said he was not thinking about anything, just resting. The servant said that his master is always overworked, and because of the trip north, he has a backlog of things to do. So it's all just making things worse. Davin said there was nothing he could do about it, and it was his responsibilities, and unfortunately, he didn't get to meet his brother, but he really wanted to say hello to him. Varen said he understood, and it was no big deal, because if circumstances didn't allow it, that's a good reason. The Archduke laughed and asked from whom he heard that phrase, but the guy said to rest properly. When he had finished with his business, answered nothing, and left. Davin remembered Aisha's words telling him it was cold outside and asking him to insulate himself. The man had never seen her so alive, and she cared for him. When the girl thanked him, the guy noticed that she was different from other noble ladies because she knew how to thank sincerely. As long as Aisha thanked him, he knew why he lived. At the time, Davin truly believed Aisha would always be there for him. But Aisha said that due to unforeseen circumstances, she was marrying Archduke Michael Leatherbane. Everyone congratulated the newlyweds on their wedding, but they didn't understand why the bride was so sad. After all, she is the most important lady in the north, so why her face should be so dejected was incomprehensible. Davin was upset because if Aisha had waited for him, he would have helped her, but Archduke Michael ruined everything. The guy approached the young bride and asked if she wanted to talk to him alone. Aisha told him that she had to divorce Michael and asked him to prepare the documents. But everything must be kept secret, and she was asking him very much to do so. The guy agrees. It wasn't an easy request, but Aisha was Southern, and since she was Deven's person, he was obligated to help her. The boy had been gathering the necessary papers for 2 months, but why he felt so empty all of a sudden was unclear, and he assumed that once it was over, she wouldn't need him anymore. Deven called himself a complete egomaniac. That the unfortunate Aisha would be gone was still just an assumption, but he already missed her image. He was weak and destroyed, and he missed Aisha a lot. The man thought back to her words about hurting Michael and didn't know what she meant. He assumed that for such a pathetic reason, she did not want to return to the South. But it was better to stop thinking about it, because he was a Malthian and should not forget his duty. Still, Aisha would soon be leaving this place in the north where there was nothing but savage cold. Aisha was very happy to take a warm bubble bath, and her mood was super, but where all those bruises on her body came from was unclear. But the Duchess had no way to ask anyone about it, and the servants pretended not to notice them, though she had a hunch. One of the maids said she would prepare the mistress's dress. Aisha thanked Lara, and the protagonist decided that she had to find out about it somehow. The maid asked her mistress what necklace she wanted to wear today, but she didn't care because it wouldn't be visible under her clothes anyway. But the maid wanted her mistress to be the most beautiful, so she asked if she could choose the necklace herself. Aisha asked what exactly Lara wanted her to wear. The maid provided a necklace with a pink gemstone, as it matched her mistress's eyes well and was just perfect. And the Duchess agreed. Suddenly the maid heard an ouch. Lara was very scared and apologized because she thought she had hurt mistress. There was a bruise on the back of her neck too. It wasn't visible, so Aisha didn't know about it before. Lara apologized and said that she had done it unintentionally because the bruise was almost healed and she thought it wouldn't be felt anymore. But mistress calmed her down and said that she had not done it on purpose, so it was not her fault. Lara said that she still should have acted more carefully and repented a lot. Aisha thought it was a great excuse to ask a question. The protagonist asked Lara not to cry because everything was fine, and after all, now she was in the north and she wouldn't have any more bruises. The girl hugged the maid. Lara apologized again, saying that his lordship had asked her to treat his wife gently and she had mistakenly hurt her. She also thanked her. Just as the protagonist thought, Michael knew too, and even warned the maid, who kept apologizing. Even though Aisha suspects exactly what happened, she is still uncomfortable. Aisha's father is Baron Marion. Aisha would send her husband, and he would say that he was going at least for a day and would try to be away from her for only 1 day. The lady asked him what day it was, for so many days had already passed, and asked him if he was the self-sacrificing Lord of the North. Aisha saw Michael off, and he asked her to hold his hand a little longer because she was cold, but she said she was fine, and she was wearing several pairs of gloves so her hands wouldn't freeze. The Duke held the girl's face with his hands because he was admiring her, and she didn't understand what he was doing. Michael ordered the maid not to leave his wife a step before he arrived, and the maid asked if he was headed for the training ground. Upon hearing this, the woman said that Sir Robert had been so content lately, but now he was at the end of his rest. As he left, Michael said that his wife was very energetic and he liked that. Aisha didn't realize what it was, and the maid asked if something was wrong because she blushed dramatically. The mistress said she was fine, but why her heart suddenly felt so empty, Aisha did not understand. The maid asked if the Duchess was cold, and she didn't know what to do because his lordship had already left, or he would have taken her by the hand. The protagonist suggested that apparently she had already gotten used to his company, and so now she was somehow sad. But the girl decided that she had enough to think about and asked Chloe for some hot tea. The maid asked if Aisha was talking about the tea that the Duke had brought and noticed that her mistress seemed to like it very much. Chloe asked to take her mistress to the dining room because she should not leave her a step, and the Duchess gave her permission. This cheerful knight is Aisha's personal guard, Lady Chloe. There is no important role for her in the story, but she is one of Michael's closest men, and at his behest, she accompanies her at all times. And this brave protector was more excited about the walk than Aisha herself. It was truly a unique character. Chloe said that after tea she would take the mistress for a walk, and she in turn agreed, but she saw Aaron in front of her. The boy greeted the mistress and said he was glad to see her, but Aisha said that she had called him not only to say hello. The boy didn't know what she was talking about. The protagonist thought about the fact that Aisha also has a younger brother, and if he attends the academy, he and Aaron are probably the same age. The girl turned to Aaron and asked if he was hungry. Chloe told a story about how Sir Robert had been rejected and said that he hadn't been himself for a week afterwards. They were really sad stories. And after she told the first story, she started telling something similar about how he'd been blown off before. Aisha told Aaron to eat and not to be shy, for which the boy thanked the mistress profusely. Chloe said she was very shocked after all the stories with Robert and thought he would resign. The main character, though, laughed, but she had listened to the story so many times before. In a cold room, good tea takes on a special flavor, and if Aisha hadn't been up north, she would never have felt it. Something made the girl feel so calm. Suddenly, Michael came in and told Aaron that he had not given permission to drink tea with his wife. Aisha said that she was actually the one who asked him. Her fiancé said that Aaron was not welcome. The girl didn't understand why he wasn't welcome, so she said that he was just passing by, so she called him. Duke was angry because he didn't understand how Aaron dared to walk past his mistress. Chloe told the mistress not to worry, because the Duke and Aaron are very close, and he was just kidding because they have known each other for a very long time, and Aaron can, so to speak, grew up in this estate. Aisha was surprised and realized that Michael had raised him, but why he was so cold to him, she did not understand. Meanwhile, Michael approached Aaron and told him that he ate as if he had not been fed, and asked him to thank his wife for her generosity. The protagonist has picked up on the fact that Michael holds his close friends so dear and yet treats them so rudely. Suddenly, the Duke's butler came running into the room. She also didn't know what had happened, and she had a bad feeling about it. The man said that Aisha's father, Baron Marion, was here. Aisha was shocked because he had bankrupted the family, sold his own daughter, and now he had dropped in for a visit. The Duchess didn't understand how he could not be ashamed at all. This all didn't happen to Aisha, but for some reason her heart was beating very fast. Michael reassured his wife and told her that everything was fine, as it was not her fault. They had already seen his father in the distance, who was telling Michael that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Aisha noticed that he was not primarily interested in his daughter, but in the Archduke, and she already had a rough idea of how the Baron felt about Aisha. The man said that it had been a hard road to get here, and the cold was terrible, and asked to be escorted inside as quickly as possible. Aisha asked what he was talking about, but Michael interrupted her, saying he couldn't go inside. The Baron was shocked and laughed off the jokes and said they weren't funny, and since the Duke was so strict, he had one thing to do for him. And the man said for the Duke to be kind and lend his father-in-law some money. The man kept asking for money while laughing. Aisha noticed that the old man was not modest, and Michael was very angry, and it was obvious to the naked eye. The Archduke asked Aisha if she minded. At first the girl did not understand, but then she agreed. She didn't like this man and couldn't even call him father. Michael called for the guards, and they quickly began to lead him out. The knights told him their assumptions that His Highness had gotten stuffy. Aisha's father shouted at the Duke, calling him a puppy and asking what he was doing. The Duke said to take the man away because it was high time Baron got a closer look at the cold of the north. The man shouted to the Duke to wait for him, and he wanted to explain everything, but no one cared. Aisha was surprised because there was not a gram of nobility in this man and did not understand if he was really a member of the nobility. When the man was taken away, he promised that Michael would regret it because he had forgotten about the treaty. Aisha had no idea what kind of treaty they were talking about. The girl asked Michael what her father was talking about. The Archduke told Aisha not to take anything into her head because the old man was talking nonsense. He added that it was very windy where they were standing and suggested they go inside. Michael started to leave, and the girl called out to him, asking him to wait for her. The protagonist had so many thoughts in her head. She wondered if she should stay in the north or if it would be better to just pretend to be Aisha until he finally appropriated her life. Aisha was also not clear what Michael was hiding from her and whether the fact that she had moved into Aisha's body gave her the right to interfere in her life. Because she could ruin and not even her own life at any moment. Michael said that it was worth leaving Aisha's father without shoes so that he could fully experience the northern cold. Aisha laughed nervously because she didn't know what to say to that. The protagonist did not understand whether it is possible to treat a person in such a way without looking at his actions, and decided that she is in Aisha's body and should do something about it, because Aisha can return to her body. Aisha said that she would say a few words to her father afterwards, but Michael said that she better not, and that he would not allow her to do that from now on. Aisha interrupted him and said that it was her own business and she would deal with it herself. The Duchess walked around the estate and was surprised because everyone was very busy and she does nothing, and because of her health problems, Michael keeps telling Aisha to rest. A man with a stack of papers was walking by the mistress and accidentally dropped one of them. Aisha picked it up and called out to him saying that he had dropped something, but the man didn't hear, so Aisha assumed that he didn't seem to care and decided that she had better take the papers herself. Seeing that large stack of sheets, Aisha wondered who all of this was addressed to. The assumption was for the butler. So Aisha decided to see what sheet she was holding. She read that it was a report on the last breakfasts of the duchy. It was interesting what Michael was buying. Aisha began to read. At the end, she read that 2,000 gold pieces had been paid to Baron Marian. Aisha came to Michael and asked that he explain to her what it was, and she did not understand what it meant. The man began to look at the papers, and his wife said that he had to explain everything from beginning to end and could not hide anything. Michael began the story by saying that when they got married, their family had made a pact. But Aisha didn't really remember that, because she hadn't been in this body yet. And later another clause was added to that contract. Aisha didn't know about it because her father had asked for it to be added secretly. Aisha went over and told Michael to tell her immediately what the clause was. The aforementioned Archduke Litherbaun would have to provide Baron Marianne with certain amounts of money if necessary from the time Aisha Marianne became Aisha Litherbaun until she no longer bore the surname of Archduke Michael Litherbaun. But Aisha still didn't understand why, and said that there must be a reason why Michael agreed to this condition. The Archduke said he agreed because she was Aisha Marianne, and he didn't want Marianne's family to be poor because they were her kin after all. Yes, and Michael could afford it, so he agreed. Aisha saw that he was sincere, and Michael did it for the family of the protagonist, Aisha. The girl realized that Michael's intentions were purely good. She told Michael that she couldn't even get mad at him. The boy was happy, but Aisha told him not to do that from now on. After a little thought, Aisha told Michael that she had something to ask him. She told him to bring her father to her as soon as possible. Aisha asked Chloe if she didn't mind, and the knight said that she could show her father where he was. Her father was brought much faster than Aisha expected, and she almost made him wait. Michael turned to Aisha and told her that intimidation alone would not do the trick. But Aisha said it would be bad if her father went off on a tangent and started asking for sums that even a duke could not accept, and confidently told the guards to open the doors. The father came running in shouting that his daughter was a real ungrateful louse and started threatening her that she would not get rid of him so easily. He almost got to the lady, but the knights caught him in time and immediately asked if the Duchess was all right. Aisha was shocked at Baron for nearly attacking her. She was shocked at how the real Aisha could tolerate such treatment. The girl came closer and said that she wanted to discuss something with him like a daughter with her father. The Baron was furious and shouted that this occasion was not normal because he had been dragged here like a sack of potatoes just to talk to his unscrupulous daughter. Aisha asked him to calm down and step aside. When he backed away a little, Aisha said she wanted to talk about it. The girl came closer to him and leaned over and showed him a piece of paper. The Baron was shocked when he read it because it was a request for expulsion from the family. Aisha said she wanted out of the Marianne family and asked her father to sign at the bottom. Mistress ordered Chloe to free one of Baron's hands. The protagonist assumed that the real Aisha probably wouldn't even dare to look Baron in the eye. Her father shouts that Aisha is making a big mistake and he doesn't know who put her up to this, but he is disappointed and asks where she will go if the Archduke leaves her and says that only he will take her back because he is her birth father. The Archduke was furious and asked who would leave whom. The man told Aisha that she should not listen to this nonsense, but Aisha said that she was fine and that her father just didn't understand the situation. The Duchess said that no one had made her decide to renounce her family, and that even if she stayed on the streets in the future, she would still be happy that she would no longer have a father like the Baron. The man was completely shocked and speechless. Baron asked what was wrong with his Aisha and started apologizing and saying that this is the last time and it won't happen again. He asked her many times if she wanted to leave her father. Aisha said she would think about it after he signed the paper. The Baron wanted her to answer him. The man said he couldn't sign such a thing, to which Aisha ordered him to sign before she finally decided to give up on him. Aisha told him not to stall and told Chloe to do her thing. The knight drew her sword and held it in front of the Baron, and that did the trick. The man signed everything in a flash. The protagonist was disgusted because the Baron himself is afraid to get even a scratch, and Aisha was almost every day beaten. Aisha checked the document and said that that was the end of it, and that she didn't need to see him off. The man grabbed Aisha by her skirt and started asking her how she could just leave him. Aisha told him not to worry because she was not going to give up the documents right away. The father begged Aisha Marianne to change her mind, but the girl did not listen to him. The protagonist turned to him and said she was Aisha Leatherbane. Her father said that no matter what happens, she will still be part of the Marianne family. To which the man got a response that it was up to Aisha herself and she already had the papers. The man continued to lash out and ask to be released. They said goodbye, and watching the guards escort the Baron out of the manor didn't make Aisha feel any better. She didn't really want to do that to the man who was called her father, and the protagonist wondered how Aisha would have behaved in her place. The girl suggested that the real Aisha would probably be in pain because she grew up in poor conditions, and she definitely lacked parental love. What was it like for Aisha to live with a father who didn't care for her at all? She must have felt very lonely. Whether there was any point in the main character getting upset about it is not clear. There were more important things to do now, and Aisha needed to dispel her sadness. Madame thanked Chloe. The knight was worried and asked if everything was all right with the Duchess, because she said that she was going to leave the family. But Aisha thoughtfully said no. Chloe's face changed instantly, and she was completely shocked and didn't understand why the mistress was doing all this. Aisha said that she was not going to renounce the family, and she just needed a leverage on her father to threaten him. Chloe did not understand how it was possible, and Aisha told her not to worry because these papers would serve the mistress well in the future. Michael told Aisha that he got worried because he thought she was serious. The girl told the Archduke that she couldn't leave her family yet, because then the other innocent victim would be left alone. Michael asked if she was talking about her brother, and Aisha confirmed that she was. She could not leave Aaron alone because he was still studying and needed help. Maybe there are other people who need Aisha's support. But the question is how Aisha will take Aaron away from his father, because she doesn't know much about Aisha's brother and needed to find out more about him somehow. Michael suggested to his wife that she could just bring her brother here. Aisha wondered if the Archduke knew what he was talking about, because taking responsibility not only for her, but also for her brother was a big deal. Aisha thought he had enough of her and the worries she gave him and considered him a masochist. Aisha said that Davin had said he was looking out for him and the boy was at the academy. Michael was surprised to hear about Davin and remembered that he'd taken offense last time. The plot hadn't started yet, and Michael and Davinus weren't supposed to cross paths, so why Michael hated him so much was unclear. The first assumption was that Davin was a Southerner and an Archduke of the South. The Duchess asked what happened to Michael's money and if he had returned those 2,000 gold pieces. Michael said that he had done nothing. The Duchess did not understand why, and the Duke only laughed at this. This money went straight to the Baron's estate, and Michael covered the delayed wages of the employees and all the expenses of maintaining the house. And it turns out the Baron doesn't pay much attention to the place where he lives, and he himself wasn't aware of it yet. Aisha told Michael that she should have been notified in advance, but it was for the best, and his father would be furious when he found out. Michael said with a smile that the Baron should come here if he was unhappy, because his wife would deal with him. Michael started to leave, and Aisha asked where he was going. The man wanted to get some air and noticed that Aisha hadn't been out today either. Aisha had forgotten that because the tea party had been so pleasant that she had forgotten all about it. In spite of the cold, the girl was in a good mood. Chloe heard that the gentlemen were going for a walk and said that she wanted to go with them. Aisha was asked where she was and what she was doing. The girl replied that she was doing well. No idea what she would think if she found out about everything. But they didn't want Aisha to be sad when she got back. Chloe said that she was actually the one responsible for Mistress's walks. They were all having fun together. An unknown voice said they were getting along very well, and that's unexpectedly good. But there were reports that they were not doing well. Another unknown voice answered that such information was present. The question was whether the Baron was taken care of. The Baron was finished because the Archduke's men had followed them, but they had put him in the carriage and rendered him unconscious beforehand. It would be a shame if they lost this card after using it only once, because they would probably still need it. The job was done, and the men promised each other to keep in touch. Aisha wrote a letter to Davin, saying that she was in the north. Michael read it all, and it was as if he was answering the letter and said that it was not strange that she was in the north because she was the Archduke's wife. Aisha wrote that Michael takes great care of her, and the man said that it was natural for him to take care of her and asked why he would write such a thing. The Duchess added to the list that it was very cold outside and a strong wind was blowing. Michael wondered and asked if the girl was cold again. Aisha apologized and asked if Michael could move to the other side. Michael asked why he had to do that. Aisha said she was uncomfortable writing because he was holding her hand. The Duke said he didn't think Aisha should write the letter at all. Aisha assumed that her husband had taken offense again. Michael asked why she was writing to Davin in the first place. The girl realized that he was definitely offended. The protagonist again wondered why her husband hated Davin so much. Yes, he is a southerner, but he is very kind and always courteous and nice. Davin is not even angry at the emperor who banished him. But Aisha suggested that maybe there was another reason, and so the protagonist asked why Michael disliked him so much. The man said that for one thing, he was annoyed by his face. This really surprised Aisha, and she yelled at him and immediately apologized for blurting it out. Michael said that as soon as he saw Davin's face, he felt stuffy. But Aisha misunderstood and thought it was true, because Davin's face was so radiant when you looked at it. He's perfect for the title of Duke of the South. But after some thought, Michael said he had another reason he didn't like Davin. The man sat down again, and Aisha wondered what that reason was. Aisha had no idea what Michael had to say about Davin. The protagonist asked her to try to take it easy on Davin because he was her friend. Michael hovered over the girl and said that Aisha and Davin were too close. So close that he comes to visit her unannounced. Aisha was surprised and asked if he knew about it, to which she got the answer that Aisha must not have thought Michael would know about anything. But the protagonist said that's not the case. Although aristocrats of the North and South send invitations to each other out of courtesy, both sides don't often accept them for several reasons. First, it's a long journey. And secondly, differences in mentality make it impossible for Southerners and Northerners to find common ground. Varen was shocked, because usually Davin didn't read invitations to the end, but here he read and read. The servant came and told the master that a letter had come from the north. The Archduke was surprised, and Varen said he thought it was just another invitation and asked if he should throw it away, to which the boy got a confident answer that he should give it to Davin because he wanted to read it. The boy was surprised and asked why his master had suddenly become so excited and handed it over. When the Archduke saw that the letter was from Aisha, he froze. The servant noticed that his lord could see everything on his face, and the letter was definitely from her. But suddenly the Duke became very serious. The letter said that Aisha is still cold, but she is slowly getting used to it, and Michael is taking great care of her and helping her with everything. Soon, Aisha will even be able to go outside the grounds of the estate. In the north, it turns out, there is an ice festival, and Aisha asks if he knows of one. Aisha and Michael decided to go there. Aisha said it was a shame that it was all for nothing, because Deven had tried so hard to help her. The letter ended with the words, "Sorry and thank you," and a request that Davin not get sick. Davin turned to Varen and asked how many days were left until the day of the Festival of Colors. The guy said that the festival was still quite a long time away and about 2 months or so. Davin repeated the words about 2 months, and Varen didn't understand what was the matter. One of the maids got very nervous, and Aisha didn't understand why, but the maid said with a smile that her reaction was normal since it was Aisha's first time outside the manor, asking if the mistress herself was worried. Aisha smiled too and said there was such a thing. Truth be told, it wasn't exactly the first time, though she had no time to look around the city during her escape. The maids prepared the mistress to leave, and looking at her said that everyone would admire Aisha's beauty because she was just beautiful. Aisha asked the maids to give her a robe, but the women didn't want to, for mistress was better off without it. My lady told Michael to put on a fur hat. The maids remembered that mistress was not used to the climate and that she would be cold in such an outfit. The servants dressed the girl very warmly, and Aisha asked Michael what was the point of all those beautiful garments, and realized that it would be lost. Michael didn't care. The head thing was Aisha's warmth. The man kissed Aisha and said they could go. Aisha was really starting to get a little worried. When Aisha saw all the knights lined up outside, she was shocked and didn't understand why they had such an entourage if they were just going to the festival. Michael said that on the first day of the festival, there were always a lot of people in the streets, and to avoid pandemonium, they went out with a small number of people as escorts. Aisha was shocked at the number of knights that Michael called small and said she thought they would stand out a bit. The Archduke said that they had to anticipate all eventualities, and it was Aisha's first time out of the house. Aisha didn't understand what the Duke was trying to say, and the man said that if you think about it, it wasn't the first time, because she had escaped from the manor several times before. Aisha got embarrassed and said that she would probably go first, but Michael did not let her do so. The Archduke came over, took Aisha's hand and kissed it, and told his beloved wife to sit down. It was karma for the protagonist, because to be so foolishly caught trying to escape is a disgrace. In the carriage, Aisha asked Michael what was so exciting about the ice festival. The Archduke said, for example, that the sculptures were bizarre and said that at night you could see the northern lights and remarked that it was worth it. Aisha was surprised when she heard about the glow, and she asked because she had never even looked up at the sky before. And Michael said that something amazing would be waiting for her now. There were a lot more people here than Aisha expected because there was a large crowd, and the Duchess realized that she was probably the only one who was so cold. Aisha pondered that if it was terribly cold out, why everyone was so calm and talking about how it was good weather and a perfect day for the festival, and the girl felt like a stranger. Michael walked over to his wife and told her to walk faster, and Aisha pointed to the fancy statue and told him that it must be very hard to make one like that. The Duke remarked that his wife was rather generous with compliments, but the girl said that it was not, in fact, a compliment, but the truth. The protagonist remarked that it was a glorious festival, and the contests were quite interesting, and the atmosphere was very joyful. Everyone was surprised that the Duke and Duchess showed up at the festival and asked them how the festival was going. As they were walking, the main character noticed a flower, and it was very surprising because it was the first time she saw such a thing. In the background, the men were talking about their lives and how they were living. They said that they were doing great because of the Duke. Aisha wondered what the name of this flower was, and she could smell the fragrance coming from it. Michael was glad that his beloved was enjoying the festival. Still, she shouldn't move away from him. Aisha apologized to Michael and said that it was because she had accidentally stared at a flower. The girl didn't understand why he was looking at her like that and assumed that apparently Michael was scared, and so the girl said that she had just seen a flower and it was an unusual sight considering it was winter. Michael said that this flower was called Kilimanja. The man said that this flower only grows in the north, is frost resistant, and is so different from other flowers that it can be seen from afar. Aisha thought about how there was something creepy about that flower, and it turns out Michael even knew the name of the flower. That was amazing. Chloe called out for Mistress, saying she had come, and assumed that Mistress must have been waiting for her by now, but Michael asked that she get behind them. He was a protective barrier for her. Michael told his wife that they were in the main square, and it was where people gathered for the big celebrations. They had been there for a long time, but Michael was not the least bit tired of explaining things to Aisha, and she was beginning to get stressed by the excessive attention from other people. The protagonist decided that it was time for her to try and distract herself and asked Michael about a festival or celebration today. There would probably be something set up in the square. But the Duke said that nothing was officially planned, but something might be. Suddenly, they were greeted by someone at the ice festival. Michael noticed that the man had taken over again this year, and Aisha was surprised that they knew him. Michael said that the man arbitrarily became the host of the festival every year, even though no one asked him to. Aisha was shocked, because Northerners are different too, and the male presenter was saying that they had to do something before the festival started, and by chance he saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was his lordship and his wife. The man remarked that their archduke had grown up a lot and was telling everyone to look at the way the lord was holding his wife by the shoulders. The man remarked that they looked great together. All the guests said he was telling the truth, and their couple was very cute. The man called everyone over and said that they were seeing their new duchess for the first time, and remarked that she and the duke harmonized very well with each other, and asked that they say a few words to the people. But Michael said he told him to tell him not to ask for such a thing. But Aisha said there was nothing to be done about it, and told them to go and say something. The girl started to take off her coat and asked that Lara support him while she gave her speech. Michael said she'd probably be cold without him, but the protagonist said it was her first time out in public and she wanted to look good. And it was all supposed to be for a little while, so it was okay. But it wasn't really okay. She was thinking about how she was about to stiffen up from the cold. The host handed the microphone to the Duke and said he was going to speak, but the Duke wasn't happy because there was no way to shut that man up. And Aisha herself had a splitting headache because it was a rash act. But she'd asked for it, so she decided she couldn't let it show. Aisha's husband began his story and said that he was Duke Michael Leatherbane and he would provide security for tonight's festival. He ordered everyone to enjoy themselves, and now it was Aisha's turn to speak. She wasn't sure she could get a single word out of her, and there was no way she was going to pass out right here. The girl was very worried, but Michael took her hand and told her that she shouldn't overburden herself. He kissed her hand, and she realized that Michael was right there with her, and she didn't have to be afraid of making a mistake. After he took her hand, she felt much better, and she blamed it all on just being overexcited. The main character began her speech and said that she was Duchess Aisha Leatherbane, and she hoped that today would remain in their minds as a beautiful memory. It wasn't as cold as it had been then, but she couldn't feel her fingers. She decided she was already anticipating how she would be shivering when she got back to the manor. So right now, she needed to get the best of herself. It seemed to Michael that his wife had a better appetite outside than at home, but the girl said that wasn't true, and it was just Aaron tempting her with goodies. The girl asked him if it was the first time he was trying this dish, because it was the first time for her. But the guy said that he had already eaten it in the capital. Aisha asked him if he had eaten in the capital, and the boy said he had come here from the capital. The protagonist wiped his mouth because he had gotten dirty, and Aisha thought he was a native northerner, and she was rather surprised that he was from the capital because he just had a chill coming from him, like everyone from the north. But the guy said it was all just prejudice. And after that, Aisha apologized, and Michael remarked that his wife was interested in Aaron. But she said it wasn't that she was interested. She was just overprotective, because Aaron probably didn't like her treating him like a child because he was annoyed when she wiped the food off his face. The main character decided that he was definitely mad, so she apologized to the guy for hurting him. But he said it was okay, and it still tormented her that she thought she had done something wrong. Aaron had already left with the maid, and they were talking about something of their own. Suddenly, Aisha was called by her husband, and turning back, he told her that she had soiled herself. The man took a handkerchief and wiped his wife's face. Michael thanked Aisha, and she was very surprised because she was supposed to be the one thanking him. So she asked what he was thanking her for, but the man didn't answer normally. He said it was just for nothing. But Aisha decided not to back down and asked again what he was thanking her for, but the Duke told her to forget and to look in that direction. The girl asked again what he wanted to say, but looking in that direction, she was distracted and forgot what she wanted to ask. It was just fine, and no one but her was surprised. But apparently the people here were used to it. But whether Aisha could get used to it was unclear, and it probably wouldn't be as interesting in time. But maybe she was just rushing things. Still, getting used to such beauty would be an incredible luxury. Michael suddenly came up behind Aisha and put a hat on her, telling her that she was going to freeze soon. The girl was startled and said that he had scared her a little. But when the man became embarrassed and realized that something had changed, and now she was looking into his eyes. Some men were discussing a situation about a Southern aristocrat owing the Bank of the North and didn't understand how it happened. One of them thought he wished he didn't have to deal with the South, but the other didn't even know how it happened, but hoped they could find a solution to the problem somehow and quickly. Aisha's father begged for help, saying that he had children that he was responsible for, hence all the debts. The Duke was shocked because the estate was in a terrible state and his own people didn't trust him, so he turned to him. Aisha peeked into their room and heard the Baron say he had children he was responsible for and wondered if he was talking about her. The Duke called the girl to him. The man asked if he was talking about his daughter and offered Michael to take her as his concubine if he liked her. But Michael picked up on the fact that the Baron didn't choose his words at all, and from afar, it wasn't noticeable how early the girl's body was. The Baron apologized and decided to be quiet for a while. When the girl approached, she mumbled something, but the man didn't hear and asked again. He only heard the word save. But Aisha wasn't referring to saving herself. She was asking that Michael save her father. Her mother thanked Michael for always being there for her, and he told her that the only thing he could do for her was to pray. The mom was telling Michael not to worry about anything because he is strong and he should not get discouraged. The boy hugged his mom and told her that he would protect her and the whole North. The Duke understood Aisha's feeling perfectly because she wanted to protect her family. This girl couldn't stay there because the Baron would only hurt his daughter. He wanted to help her. Michael said he would save her father, but on one condition. That condition was that he would bind himself in marriage. Michael saved Aisha by remembering his own past, and at first glance he did it out of pity and nothing more. However, this was not the only reason the marriage actually took place, although Michael would try to convince everyone otherwise. The Duke saw in Aisha the same selflessness that he himself possessed, and decided that they had a chance at married life, which was not as happy as he had expected. The maids talked about how they didn't even have a wedding kiss, but another one of them said it was okay because they had a marriage of convenience. But everything was kind of weird because there was no benefit to the Duke from such a wedding. All of a sudden, they got quiet because they decided you were none of their business and decided to be quiet because if they were heard, it wouldn't be nice. As Michael looked into Aisha's eyes, his guilt began to gnaw at him, and though he hadn't counted on love and acceptance from day one, still, he hadn't expected to be so hurt. He would tell his wife that he was going out to eat, and she would have to make a meal as well. But Aisha was telling Michael to get out of her room and apologized for it. It hurt Michael a lot because he thought she would never open up to him, but he decided it didn't matter because he had the North and he was used to a lonely life anyway. But why is it that when he sees her, he wanted to talk to her so badly? He remembered the moment she woke up and asked what he called her and yelled about being cold. He thought back to all the times she'd been good to him and didn't understand what had happened to her. because everything had changed the day she'd started looking confidently into his eyes. Now, Michaela was even anxious while she was around, but why it was like that and where the feeling came from, he didn't understand. The man stared at his wife so intently that Aisha wondered if he wanted to tell her something. After a little thought, Michael said that her hat did not fit properly. Aisha thanked him, and the Duke said that they would stay a little longer and it would be time to go back. And she also wanted to be his family. But it was strange that he wouldn't answer the call. The man apologized and said he was at a festival and there were a lot of people there, so he would call someone back. He hesitated, telling someone to just imitate, and that certain someone got into character very well. And in the end, it wouldn't make him feel bad, but only Michael, Davin, and Aisha. And Aisha, because she was now the Duke's wife, and her name was only mentioned briefly in the reports. At first, he thought she was a sad, quiet girl, and yet she had managed to charm 2 dukes. How he was supposed to take advantage of her, he did not yet understand. Aisha asked her maid how her last day had been, but was told that it had been so-so, because the end of the festival is always the least interesting. But still, the contest of who could last on the ice too was awesome. Another maid told her not to say such things in front of Madame. The protagonist thought about it and recalled that there were a lot of brutal contests, and she got so cold that she had to miss the last day of the festival. The maids admired their mistress because she was simply beautiful. When she said hello to the townspeople on the first day, everyone was very surprised that she dared to do so. Aisha asked them not to exaggerate because lately everyone was just talking about her and the woman who was able to change the Duke, and he became very romantic. But Aisha thought that wasn't entirely true.